There's a place on Earth where everything you know started. And I mean everything. The device you're watching this on right now, the math that built it came from there. The alphabet you're reading, born there. The 7-day week, the 60-minute hour, the laws that govern your city, the 3 largest religions on the planet, all of it, same place. But here's what nobody talks about. How did one region, one relatively small piece of land, become the birthplace of human civilization itself? And why? After giving the world everything, did it become the most fought-over territory in human history? This is the story they don't teach you in school. Not because it's hidden, but because it's so massive, so complicated, and so important that most people don't know where to start. Today, we're starting at the beginning. And I promise you, by the end of this video, you'll never look at history the same way again. Let's go back. Way back. Chapter 1. The Garden. 10,000 years ago, most humans were nomads. They followed animal herds, gathered wild plants, and never stayed in one place too long. Survival was the only goal. There was no civilization, no cities, no written language, nothing, except in one place, between 2 rivers in what we now call Iraq, something impossible happened. Humans stopped moving. They planted seeds. They built permanent homes. They created the first villages, then towns, then actual cities with thousands of people living together. The Greeks later called this place Mesopotamia. It means between rivers. The Tigris and Euphrates rivers flooded every year, leaving behind rich, dark soil perfect for farming. But here's the mystery that archaeologists still debate. Why here? Why not Egypt right away? Or China? Or anywhere else? The answer changes everything. This region had the perfect combination. Fertile soil, yes, but also wild wheat and barley growing naturally, wild animals that could be domesticated, and a climate that was just right. Not too hot, not too cold. Scientists call this area the Fertile Crescent. It's a curved strip of land that runs from the Persian Gulf up through modern Iraq and down through Syria and into Israel and Lebanon. In this place, around 8000 BC, humans invented agriculture. And once they did that, everything changed. Chapter 2. The First Everything. Think about this. When you don't have to spend every single day hunting and gathering food, what do you do with your time? You innovate. The Sumerians emerged around 4500 BC in southern Mesopotamia. These people weren't just survivors, they were creators. Within a few thousand years, they invented writing, the first written language in human history. They pressed wedge-shaped marks into wet clay tablets. We call it cuneiform. These weren't just pictures. This was actual language. Complex ideas, stories, laws, all written down for the first time ever. The wheel. Seems simple now, right? But someone had to think of it first. And they did. Here, mathematics. The Sumerians used a base 60 number system. That's why we have 60 seconds in a minute and 360 degrees in a circle. This system was so good that we still use it thousands of years later. The first schools, the first legal codes, the first libraries, the first cities with populations over 50,000 people. But here's what gets me. They also wrote the first literature. The Epic of Gilgamesh, written around 2100 BC, is the oldest surviving great work of literature. It's about a king searching for immortality. It has a massive flood story that sounds remarkably similar to Noah's flood in the Bible, which brings us to something even bigger. Chapter 3, where God entered the picture. Now, I want to be really careful here because we're talking about religion, and I respect everyone watching this, whatever you believe or don't believe. But historically, factually, the Middle East is where the 3 largest monotheistic religions began: Judaism, Christianity, and Islam. Between them, over 4 billion people on Earth follow religions that started in this one region. According to the Bible, Abraham came from Ur, a Sumerian city in southern Iraq. Abraham is considered the father of Judaism and also revered in Christianity and Islam. Jerusalem, one of the oldest cities on earth, is holy to all three religions. It's been fought over more times than almost any other place in human history. Jesus was born in Bethlehem, in the region of Judea. Christianity spread from Jerusalem across the Roman Empire and eventually the entire world. Muhammad was born in Mecca, in modern Saudi Arabia, in 570 AD. Islam spread across the Middle East, North Africa, and far beyond within a century. Whether you're religious or not, you have to admit, this is extraordinary. Why did this happen here? Some historians think it's because the Middle East was a crossroads. Trade routes connected Africa, Asia, and Europe. Ideas mixed, cultures collided. People were exposed to different ways of thinking. Others point to the written word. Because these civilizations could write things down, ideas could spread beyond one person's lifetime. They became permanent. But there's another reason that nobody talks about enough. Struggle. Chapter 4. The Empire Factory. See, the Middle East didn't just create civilization. It created conflict on a massive scale. Think about it. You've got the most fertile land in the known world, the best trade routes, the most advanced cities. Of course, everyone wants to control it. Empire after empire rose and fell in this region. And I'm not talking about kingdoms. I'm talking about superpowers that controlled millions of people across thousands of miles. The Akkadian Empire under Sargon the Great around 2300 BC, the first multi-ethnic empire in history. The Babylonian Empire under Hammurabi around 1750 BC. He created Hammurabi's Code, one of the oldest and most complete written legal codes. An eye for an eye comes from this. The Assyrian Empire, known for their brutal military and incredible library at Nineveh, which preserved thousands of clay tablets including the Epic of Gilgamesh. The Persian Empire under Cyrus the Great around 550 BC. At its peak, it controlled 44% of the world's population. Let that sink in. Almost half of all humans alive answered to one empire based in modern Iran. Alexander the Great conquered Persia and spread Greek culture across the Middle East in the 330s BC. The Roman Empire controlled the western Middle East for centuries. Jesus lived during Roman occupation. Each empire thought they would last forever. Each one fell. But here's the twist. When Rome fell in the West around 476 AD, everyone thinks the Dark Ages began and progress stopped. Not in the Middle East. Chapter 5. The Golden Age you never learned about. If you went to school in America, you probably learned that after Rome fell, Europe went through the Dark Ages, and then the Renaissance brought learning back. But that's only half the story. And honestly, it's the boring half. While Europe was struggling, the Middle East was experiencing the Islamic Golden Age, roughly from the 8th to the 14th century. This might be the most underrated period in human history. Here's what was happening. Baghdad, the capital of the Abbasid Caliphate, became the largest city in the world, with possibly 1 million people. It had hospitals, libraries, observatories, and a house of wisdom where scholars from all over the world came to study. Muslim scholars preserved ancient Greek and Roman texts that would have been lost forever. They didn't just preserve them, they improved on them. Algebra? That word comes from Arabic. Al-Khwarizmi, a Persian mathematician in Baghdad around 820 AD, basically invented it. His name also gave us the word algorithm. Modern medicine? Physicians like Ibn Sina, known in the West as Avicenna, wrote medical encyclopedias that were used in European universities for 600 years. Optics, astronomy, chemistry, massive advances, all happening in the Middle East while Europe was barely keeping the lights on. They invented the toothbrush, check valves, the crankshaft, torpedoes, the fountain pen. Coffee? Yeah, that came from Yemen and Ethiopia and spread through the Middle East before reaching Europe. So why don't we learn about this? Partly because history is written by whoever's on top at the moment. When European powers dominated in the 19th and 20th centuries, they centered their own story. But there's another reason. Something happened that changed everything. Again. Chapter 6. The Clash. In 1095, Pope Urban II called for a crusade to capture Jerusalem from Muslim control. For For the next 200 years, European Christians and Middle Eastern Muslims fought a series of wars called the Crusades. Both sides committed atrocities. Both sides believed God was on their side. Jerusalem changed hands multiple times. Hundreds of thousands died. Now, I'm not going to get into who was right or wrong. That's not the point of this video, and honestly, there's enough blame to go around. But here's what's important to understand. The Crusades created a divide between the Islamic world and Christian Europe that still echoes today. It created stereotypes on both sides. It created mistrust that lasted centuries. But weirdly, it also led to cultural exchange. Europeans who went to the Middle East saw advanced civilizations. They brought back books, ideas, technologies, and spices. Some historians think the Crusades helped spark the European Renaissance by exposing Europeans to knowledge that had been preserved in the Islamic world. History is complicated like that. Chapter 7. The Ottomans. After the Crusades, another empire rose that would dominate the Middle East for over 600 years. The Ottoman Empire. Starting as a small Turkish state in Anatolia around 1299, the Ottomans grew into one of the most powerful empires in history. In 1453, they conquered Constantinople, the capital of the Byzantine Empire, the last remnant of Rome. They renamed it Istanbul. They controlled vast territories across the Middle East, North Africa, and even into Europe. At their peak, they were knocking on the gates of Vienna. The Ottoman Empire was multi-ethnic, multi-religious, and highly advanced. They had a sophisticated legal system, a powerful military, beautiful architecture, and a rich culture. For centuries, if you lived in the Middle East, you lived under Ottoman rule. It provided stability, a common government, trade routes that connected 3 continents. But empires don't last forever. By the 1800s, the Ottomans were declining. Nationalist movements were rising. European powers were expanding. And then came World War I. Chapter 8. The Lines in the Sand. During World War I, the Ottoman Empire sided with Germany and Austria-Hungary. They lost. And what happened next? You need to understand this, because it explains so much about the modern Middle East. Britain and France, with some input from Russia, made a secret agreement called the Sykes-Picot Agreement in 1916. They basically drew lines on a map, dividing up the Middle East into zones of influence. These lines didn't respect ethnic groups. They didn't respect religious divisions. They didn't respect tribal territories or historical boundaries. They just drew lines. After the war, the Ottoman Empire was dissolved. The Middle East was carved up into new countries: Syria, Iraq, Jordan, Lebanon. These borders were decided by European diplomats who had often never even visited these places. Imagine if someone who'd never been to America decided that Texas and California should be one country, but split Florida in half for no reason. That's essentially what happened. And we're still dealing with the consequences today. Chapter 9. The Black Gold. Then, in the early 20th century, something was discovered underneath the Middle Eastern desert that would make it the most strategically important region on Earth all over again. Oil. Massive amounts of it. More than anywhere else on the planet. Saudi Arabia, Iran, Iraq, Kuwait, the UAE. Between them, they hold over half of the world's proven oil reserves. And suddenly, every major power on Earth cared deeply about what happened in the Middle East, not because of history or culture or religion, but because of energy, because of power, because the global economy ran on oil and the Middle East had it. This changed everything. Again. Countries that had been poor became incredibly wealthy, almost overnight. Tiny kingdoms became major players on the world stage. And foreign powers, the United States, Britain, Russia, became deeply involved in Middle Eastern politics, coups, wars, interventions, alliances. The 20th century in the Middle East was chaos, and oil was often at the center of it. Chapter 10. The Human Cost. Here's what we need to talk about, and I'll be honest with you. This is the hard part. When we talk about history, especially Middle Eastern history, it's easy to focus on empires and wars and politics, dates and names and borders, but real people lived through all of this. Real families, real children. Every war we've talked about meant someone lost a parent. Every empire that fell meant someone's life was turned upside down. Every border that was redrawn split communities apart. The 20th and 21st centuries have been especially brutal. Wars, revolutions, interventions. Millions of people have been displaced. Millions have died. Entire cities have been destroyed. And for what? That's the question that haunts this region. For oil? For power? For religion? For revenge? For security? The answer is usually all of the above, and it's never simple. But here's something that gives me hope. Chapter 11. The people remain, despite everything. Despite thousands of years of empires rising and falling, despite wars and invasions and colonization and border changes. The people of the Middle East are still here. They still speak languages that have roots going back millennia. Arabic, Persian, Hebrew, Kurdish, Turkish. They still practice religions that started in their homeland thousands of years ago. They still create art, music, literature, and poetry that moves the world. They still cook food using recipes passed down for generations. If you've ever had hummus, falafel, shawarma, kebab, baklava, you're tasting history. The Middle East today is not a monolith. It's not one story. It's dozens of countries, hundreds of ethnic groups, thousands of communities, each with their own history and culture and dreams for the future. There are Middle Eastern scientists making breakthroughs in medicine and technology, artists creating beautiful works, activists fighting for human rights, entrepreneurs building businesses, teachers educating the next generation. Yes, there are still conflicts. Yes, there are still problems. I'm not going to pretend otherwise. But there's also resilience. There's also hope. There's also a deep connection to a history that literally shaped human civilization. Chapter 12. The Future. So what's next for the Middle East? I don't know. Nobody does. But I know this. The same region that gave us writing, mathematics, agriculture, law, and 3 major religions is still full of people who are just as creative, just as intelligent, just as capable as their ancestors. The challenges are enormous. Political instability, economic inequality, environmental issues, ongoing conflicts. These are real and serious. But there are also young people across the Middle East who are connected to the wider world like never before, who are educated, ambitious, and ready to build something new. There are movements for reform, for peace, for progress. They don't always make the news, but they're happening. The story of the Middle East isn't over. It's not even close to over. We're just in another chapter. And if history teaches us anything, it's that the Middle East has a way of surprising the world. It's done it before. It'll do it again. Let me bring this home. The Middle East is the most historically important region on Earth. Full stop. It's where humans first built cities, where we invented writing and mathematics, where the world's major religions were born, where empire after empire rose to dominate the known world, where the Islamic Golden Age preserved and advanced human knowledge while Europe struggled. It's also been the battleground for some of history's most devastating conflicts. It's been colonized, divided, and fought over for resources and power. But through it all, the people have endured, the culture has survived, the legacy continues. When you look at the Middle East, you're not looking at a problem to be solved or a mystery to be figured out. You're looking at the mirror of human civilization itself. All our greatest achievements, all our worst mistakes, all our hopes and fears and dreams. It's all there. And understanding that history, really understanding it, not just the simplified version, that makes you understand humanity itself a little better, because we all came from there, in a way. Not literally, but culturally, civilizationally. The story of the Middle East is our story, and it's still being written. If this video changed how you think about history, hit that like button. It really helps more people discover this story. And subscribe, because we're diving into more historical deep dives that will completely change your perspective on the world. Next week, we're exploring something even more mind-blowing that you won't want to miss. Drop a comment and let me know. What surprised you most about Middle Eastern history? What do you want to learn more about? Thanks for watching. Thanks for caring about history. And remember, the past isn't dead. It's not even past. It's living in everything we do every single day. I'll see you in the next one.